And we've been involved in a few projects that have been looking at kind of documenting that modern use, working with traditional healers, sharing some of the knowledge about how they're preparing plants, and trying to capture that. But that can be very emotional because of indigenous knowledge getting out there into the public, and their fears that it's going to be exploited by for commercial use. So I was going to kind of illustrate some of that, but what we have been doing with communities, especially in South Africa, is documenting the uses of about 80 different plants, linking up the scientific names, so getting the Latin binomial names, and also then the coarser names and the other names that they're locally known with. And it's quite broad, and it's quite easily to see how you can get misunderstandings about the names of the plants, especially if you are using what could be the trivial names, the local names that go from one area to another. Okay, so we'll get some visuals in a minute. Okay. Do you want to just see if you can get it? Okay, I'll put it up, yep. Sorry, I can't see anything here, so I can just see it up there. I might think that's... Right. See but cannot do. Is it working? Yep. So. Okay, why can't I? This is just very slow.
I think maybe it's clicked on several times. So it's
Right. Okay, right. So these are the types of figures we've got of plants that we're dealing with, and those are the incorrect samples that are coming in to the trade as a percentage, and then some of those unfortunately are toxic and causing adverse responses, unfortunately some deaths as well. And so some of the challenges, when you're dealing with the traditional Chinese medicines, there's not a lot of indigenous know-how and knowledge within China, which is lacking over in the European market. They're often very good at looking at the quality of their material, but we're not so good when it comes over here. This is when I was saying about the Planta Medicas, the cabinets, looking at about 450, there's about 150 species that are common to many of the cabinets that we've been looking at. But we can look through and see the substitutes. And it's quite fascinating when you look what's known about some of these plants. There's actually, 75 of them we really have a good understanding what the bioactives are. So sometimes if we're doing kind of drug discovery programs, we don't have to actually look beyond sometimes our own back gardens to find plants that really do justify further research. It's going then into Africa, where you've got a heck of a lot of endangered species being used and coming into the trade. And the substitutes coming in, they're non-sustainably harvested. There's a lot of roots there. These are some of the street traders in parts of we've been studying them along the garden path. So this is near East London, Port Elizabeth areas. And this is the traditional healers that we've been working with. They've been sharing some of the information. But the key thing was understanding the names that they were using for their plants and how those names sometimes would change depending on the season with the plants, because the chemistry would change in the season. They were using them for treating different conditions. It's their knowledge which is actually very high. It's trying to interpret, though, and put some science behind it. And then when they were telling tales about the plants, and we've got a series of plants here, and they were blessing them. And in the process would be describing how they would be prepared. This is before they were being planted out for cultivation. And in that you'd find out more about the species, what's behind sometimes its name, how they would process it, and how they also would often ferment it, and the combinations of plants that they were using, and some of the justification why. And here is some of the plants that we've been propagating for them, and going through the coarser names and the Latin binomial names, the kind of exchange of trying to teach them about the names, but also having a better understanding of why they can use one coarser name for about 5 or 6 different species. So that's getting that better understanding. Now, some of the work here that we're involved, if we look at the plant chemistry as a bit of a box, is looking for often the active ingredient in a plant, which could be associated sometimes with just one species. That's very rarely the case. That could be a marker compound, because at times when we're going from authentication, not just the name of the plant, but also then linking it with its chemistry, but then you're usually dealing with a whole matrix of chemicals that you need to be looking at. And what we're often looking at is compounds that are associated with whatever the activity is, but also those that are used as taxonomic markers that can assist you help identify that extract from the plant is what you would hope to do. So once you've got the name, then you can start to looking at quality. With traditional Chinese medicines, we face the issue about identification, because you don't have any flowers there, you don't have all the parts that you would normally use for helping to identify them. And this is part of a project, good practice in traditional Chinese medicine, that Taipei is going to expand on. And this is one of the slides from one of the collaborators in the program. We brought together some of the challenges we face when we're trying to get information gathered about the plants. And that is the Latin binomials, the pharmaceutical names, the English names, the simpler traditional Chinese names, pinyin names. And then when you're going into the literature, because of course they're used in Japan and other Asian languages, you get a whole complexity. And at the moment, there's no real framework to bring all those names together, which is one of the projects that Q is hoping to address as a kind of a platform of names to assist on projects. This just illustrates some of the issues out there. So you can take the pinyin name, you can go then to the literature. You've got here the accepted Latin binomial name, but you'll notice in the Chinese pharmacopoeia name, they've actually got a different one. It is the same species. So, you go and then you Google it, as we all do when we're looking for information. And you find that if you go into Google, you've got different pictures of the species, so which is the right one? That is actually the correct species, but these are all different.